Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rogue Wave podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. We talk comics, movies, TV, and pop culture with the rogues who create it every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on Facebook.com/Rogue Matter Podcasts. Download this podcast immediately following the live stream on all major podcasting apps. Go to roguewavepodcast.com to subscribe. That's wave without an E. Join the movement. Go rogue, roguematter.com. I'm your host, Michael Dolce, joined as always by my cohort in crime, Mr. Hassan Godwin, Lord of the Radio. How you doing, sir? Not good.
That's my answer. Yeah.
That's good.
I'm doing great.
Yeah. You know, if I did closed captioning, it would be inaudible muffle. It was like inaudible or unaudible? Inaudible.
Inaudible. So, that's the kind of content I'm known for. That's my signature.
Inaudible sigh.
Yes. Yes.
That's where it would be.
That's my commentary on the whole world, basically.
Yeah. No, I like it.
Whatevs.
A lot of excitement the last few weeks. But today's show, I'm super excited for. We were able to last week interview Gates McFadden, and we'll be running that interview today. And next week we have.
Which is why our clothes will suddenly seriously change in mid-show.
Yeah,
right?
No one notices because we're just talking heads at this point. But
yeah, I got people who notice. Like, what are you doing? Are you guys like flash changing in between? Like, why is this happening?
One time I was part of a reality TV show. I wasn't an actual like cast member of the reality show, but it was following this black entrepreneur female, and I was helping her develop her website and her app. And so they filmed her kind of coming in and, because it was all part of her brand that she was doing. So I had a little segment. I think it might have aired. I'm not even sure, like on Dish TV or something like this. It's going back like 10 years ago. And they're like, you're going to bring 2 changes of clothes and I'm going to walk in and you're going to be like, and I'm going to be like, this is what I want the app to be like and blah, blah, blah. And then we're going to change clothes. And then I'm going to give you this. And she like handed me like a finished like brochure of like the design concepts for the app that I came up with, which I didn't actually come up with. And she's like, and then you're going to hand this to me and you're going to walk me through this. And this is what we're going to do. And I'm like, all right, reality, baby.
That's like, why? Did you ask her why all this?
No, I kind of put the pieces together. I just said, it looks like, what you see on reality shows are very, very staged.
Yeah, there's nothing reality about reality.
No.
There's absolutely nothing.
No.
Reality television is nonsense.
Yes.
But okay.
Yes.
But far be it from me to criticize a viable business model for modern day television. I won't do that.
It makes me suspect every time I look at a reality show, like, did they redo this just for which is the
Absolutely.
answer. The answer is probably yes.
Well, supposedly reality shows and they shows the old shows, right? The original shows like The Apprentice or Survivor, that kind of stuff. And
right.
then, people would just be voted out off the show, right? And they have to go home.
Yep.
This and that. Then they would go out to catch a cab. They'd pack their bags, go out and catch a cab. And there's like a crane shot of them walking out into the street to get into a cab. And there's no traffic in the street.
Right.
And I'm like, well, someone had to set this shot up because it's not that easy to just crane. You don't spontaneously crane shot, a busy boulevard in the middle of a inner city. Right.
Right.
So there's, that alone. Also, like these people are supposedly doing these confessions or sitting around contemplating, but there's a full camera crew in their face, that's the situation, right?
I'm a big fan of Oak Island on History Channel, and my wife and I joke because I'll be very keen to this staged setup, and I'll notice like, hey, he's doing this confessional. His hair is cut. Like, things like that where you're like,
who's he confessing to? There's a camera crew. It's not like you and it's a private thing.
No, it's not. But it's like inner narration of like, this is what I was. It's like director's cut while you're watching an actual show.
Yeah. But
that's essentially what it is.
The premise of it is BS. Like the whole premise, like before you even get into what these people are talking about.
Right.
The premise of how they're talking about it is already BS before we even get into the heart of what the subject matter is.
Right.
So, I don't know. I'm not going to, I already did. I already kind of soapboxed on it, but I mean, I'm just in general.
Gates McFadden coming up later on, pre-recorded interview, guys, but awesome. The Star Trek alum. She's got a new podcast.
We're not claiming that's reality, though. We're not claiming she's in the studio with us. I'm just saying.
Maybe we will. Maybe we'll leave it ambiguous. We'll reality bait.
You can't tell them it's ambiguous now. Never mind.
Yeah,
I'm done.
Gates McFadden coming up a little later. Rogue Rage. Hassan Godwin's Rogue Rage coming up. We're going to do a little pop luck dinner shortly, but first we're going to start with the breaking Discovery and AT&T Blockbuster merger. Now, obviously, this is stuff that's going on.
Not really a merger. AT&T is leaving. It's getting out of the streaming, the entertainment business, and hopefully going back primarily into telecommunications.
Yeah. I was reading too, what an embarrassment to them that this was, that like it is a storied brand. Like AT&T is like such a storied brand, and people were just, different commentators were just saying, and, different article writers, that like how much of an embarrassment it is for them. But for anybody that is not in the know, AT&T acquired WarnerMedia, and then now they're getting out. As revealed over the weekend and confirmed this morning, this was Monday morning, AT&T will merge with, of all channels, Discovery Plus, putting Discovery's David Zaslav.
AT&T was is it AT&T that's
AT&T will merge with Discovery Plus, and it will put Discovery Plus in charge of all things WarnerMedia. The new company will be able to invest in more original content for its streaming services, enhance the programming options across its global linear pay TV and broadcast channels, and offer more innovative video experiences and consumer choices. Under the terms of the deal, Warner and Discovery will merge through a complex transaction called a reverse Morris Trust. That's why you come to this show. This is all courtesy of The Beat. By the way, The Beat website is explaining this to me. I don't even know what that means. I don't think it really matters. I think the only thing that comic book fans are kind of curious about is what this means for DC Comics, which obviously we don't know. We don't know how this will affect anything, but The Beat speculates that the Discovery folks surely know the DC characters are the crown jewels of the IP library, and may even be a bit more comfortable with the nerd world than AT&T's technocratic bean counters. Maybe they'll even stop dismantling DC Comics. A couple thoughts real quick, though. One, and we'll get into this a little bit in Pop Luck later on. You wonder if this opens the door for more Zack Snyder films. That's the first question that popped into my head. The second question is, why Discovery? Just right? Doesn't that seem like an odd fit? Like they
are broadcasting. They probably actually have knowledge of, like, of the intricacies of content creation and and making like visual entertainment or whatever, as opposed to AT&T, who's
yes,
I mean, I don't know why. It's probably because they made the best offer. They were the highest. That's probably why. There's probably no deeper creative reason other than the money was right, and so they went with it. But it's I mean, it's too much, man. It's just way too much. All this stuff, like it kind of bleeds into today's Rogue Rage about all these services. Everybody's scrambling so hard to stay financially competitive. Within the realm of all this entertainment stuff. And this stuff is blowing up, and we're all being very, very distracted and very placated with so much with an embarrassment of riches. When it comes to content, there's TV shows you don't even know about that are on their 4th or 5th seasons, on some of these streaming services. So we're kind of distracted with that, it's like finding a treasure trove, and like, oh my God, there's treasure everywhere. I'm rich. Now I got to figure out how to get it all out of here. That's the discovery is one thing, no pun intended, but then the practicality of it is another. And so with all this, with all these people trying to figure out this, how to navigate the strange new world and this, post-pandemic world, like supposedly, because we're supposedly coming out of the pandemic, but it's left an indelible mark on how we consume entertainment, right? And streaming services coming out the king of all this stuff. Now, of course, people are probably going to go back out. They're going to go back to the beaches. They're going to go back to shows. Most likely they're going to go back to movies, but I'm sure movies are going to be done differently. I'm sure there's going to be,
I wonder how much
changes.
I wonder how much influence they're really going to have over the comic book end of things. I always feel like while the comics are the source material and the grounds for all the stuff that they're going to be developing, I feel like it always just gets kind of kicked to the curb, right? Like in terms of like level of importance, it's usually obviously feature films, then animation, then, hey, this is what we got. This is what built our whole, massive house of cards to begin with. And we'll just
no. All of the execs are of the impression that they're the ones who created all of it.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
They're the ones who understood the viability of it. They're the ones who procured all of this material so that they could exploit it later. So they, it's always
everyone underestimates that procurement part. It's so difficult. It's like,
yes, it's really hard to go see something I really like and then offer you a chunk of money to.
You don't understand. My kid has a poster of this guy, and so it's going to be very, very popular. We got it. That's I've heard those Hollywood stories as well.
We'll use Twitter to to gauge the importance or the movement of all these products that we're buying. It doesn't really matter. It's kind of nonsense. It's pretty bad. I mean, ultimately it's pretty bad because the source material is. I mean, hopefully you'd think that all these services are coming together and having to merge because because you can't get, it's really difficult to compete with Disney and Netflix, these monsters. And now HBO Max, which is way smaller than the other two, but it's coming up to prominence really quickly. And it's made an unprecedented deal to be able to broadcast movies 1 week after they've come out in theaters,
Well, Dune is no longer now direct to HBO Max now. They've already amended that.
It's coming out in the theater first, but it's still coming out to HBO Max. All you got to do is wait a week.
No, I know, but it used to have it now has an exclusive window, right?
Yeah, but who cares? I mean, like if you don't want to go out, you're just going to wait the 2 weeks. It is what it is. Like it's still an indelible mark on it. Whereas something that used to be exclusively in one format for months and months is now like, just wait a couple of days and then it'll be in my living room. So, which is a model they've been talking about, frankly, for a long time. But it doesn't matter. It's that these people are amalgamating because they can't compete with these other big, entities in the streaming and home entertainment business. The problem is,
it looked easy.
What you would hope that they would do, is they would understand the premise of diminishing returns. And maybe not murder the company hub that provides the source material for all this, for all these future endeavors. I mean, if you this is what the strange thing is, you'll use the MCU model to saturate the market in movies, and arguably non-viable movies, very, very questionable movies of questionable quality, or movies that have a questionable link to one another. Whereas the Marvel movies almost necessitate you try to see each and every one of them so that you can understand the next one. They don't, DC won't Warner Brothers, wouldn't copy that model. They would just copy the we've got to get as many movies out as humanly possible model. Right. So then it's like, we'll do another Batman movie and we'll do another Superman movie and we'll do, even though they've got DC comics at their disposal.
Yeah.
In the meantime, they're slowly dismantling the company instead of using it as a source to pull, new content out of it. I mean, if Shang-Chi works, then it actually shows the stupidity of DC. It really does. I mean, not DC, Warner Brothers for the most part, but I mean, Warner Brothers is DC, so technically the same thing.
Yeah.
If Shang-Chi comes out and works, like a lot of mainstream,
it's going to be worse though. It's like they're going to be like, we need the next Shang-Chi, and they're, and they're going to be like,
but I'm saying like a lot of mainstream people don't know what Shang-Chi is.
Yeah,
they don't know. I mean, they know the X-Men. Now, most people didn't even really know the Avengers until those movies came out. You know, I mean, non-comic book people.
Yep.
Right. So now the Avengers is just as big, if not bigger, than the X-Men ever were.
Way bigger.
Iron Man just as big as Spider-Man. In his original, or Batman, just as big as every iteration of Batman ever was. Yep. Right. Now, like almost every model design of any character or creature that has any kind of powered body armor on almost looks exactly like Iron Man. Like the aesthetic is completely overwrought with Iron Man imitators, or
it was
symbolically
cool.
Iron Man. Yeah. But I'm just saying it's just completely overwhelmed the visual zeitgeist of how these characters are put together and designed. So I mean, like, you can't deny that. Both of them are corporations. Corporations are their own kind of soul-sucking, artistically killing, entities in and of themselves. But one of them is using the material to its benefit and trying to exalt both the original medium as well as the whatever new aesthetic, the transmedia that they're doing with cartoons and movies and television shows. And the other one is just like, fire half your staff, and then we'll see what we come up with in the,
that's what I'm saying. That's the hope of it, right? The hope of it is that Discovery
I don't think there's any hope. I doubt there's hope.
You never know. They might look at it and go, you know what? That's the thing that always baffled me in terms of the way the previous regimes had handled the DC universe, is that they looked and saw what Marvel was doing, and they, instead of like understanding it, they like looked at the surface and been like, oh, they're just putting out a bunch of movies. That's what we got to do, and we got to catch up as quickly as possible. Not being like, wow, they had a plan and they really cultivated it and they respected the material, and they didn't always hit, but they mostly never missed. It was, oh, I see. We need to make a couple of these movies. Can we just merge them into one movie? Because then we can be right ahead and get a Justice League movie like instantaneously. To
compete with the Avengers movie.
We don't know. I mean, we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. It bears watching, but we figured we'd at least, talk briefly about it, and we'll know more. I think, right around the time Virtual Comic-Con comes around, I would imagine at that point, as long as the deals have actually been completed and done, we might get some sort of statement.
I get what you're saying. We're not going to even know. We're not going to know for years to come as to whether or not they're going to utilize any of this stuff or improve on.
No, but we'll know what they come out with from statement wise, at least to start. Right? They'll say all the right things, and then we'll see what if they actually follow through on it.
Fair enough.
All right. Wanted to talk a little bit about that, but now we want to get into one of my new favorite segments. It's absolutely one of my favorite segments now. It is Pop Luck Dinner. It is a sampling of news in and around the pop culture universe. I pit two like-minded news articles against each other. Hassan picks which one we're going to dive into. It is Pop Luck Dinner. That's tasty. All right, Hassan, kick off with a little Falcon and Winter Soldier news. Anthony Mackie on if his Captain America will appear in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, or Falcon and Winter Soldier top Nielsen charts. Which one do you want to dive into?
I wonder which one of these I want to get into. After what? How many weeks of I'm just not interested. I just don't think anybody's interesed in it.
I didn't think anybody was interested. I just said I did not like it, and my circle of people around me, people kept coming up to me saying how much they did not like it.
Your circle's a bunch of morons, though. I mean, clearly. That's all. That's all, and that's the proof.
Well-established writers and creators. I know.
Yeah, they're morons. They're just morons.
I know.
I mean, look. Here's the thing: we never know. We never know what's going to capture the hearts and minds of the people.
Sure.
Right. And we don't have immediate information on it because we don't. Nielsen comes out like months after, these streaming services because they haven't come up with a system that will be more immediate to let us know interaction. So a lot of people gauge Twitter, and these other things. Like, it wasn't trending. It never trended. Invincible rarely trended.
Right.
People are claiming Invincible is groundbreaking.
Right.
Unbelievable.
And Jupiter's Legacy has come and gone already. I mean, it's essentially Jupiter's Legacy has come and gone. I mean, that's partially because of the format that Netflix uses, which is to dump the whole season at once.
It's still, look, this is again part of the Rogue Rage segment. This was the promise that they made to us, right?
Yeah.
This content, a lot of the content that people are making nowadays are not conducive to weekly
right.
to weekly distribution. Only because they don't do complete stories. They don't write 3-act, 5-act stories anymore. It's all one long movie with a couple of credit breaks in the middle.
Yep.
So, week to week, that's not really going to work. But here's the thing again, between you and I and everybody else who's listening, which could be millions of people.
It is. It's always. That is not hyperbole.
Jupiter's Legacy. Would you have been happy with that if you had to wait 7 weeks to get to the end of that story? Would that have worked for you?
It's what's interesting again, and people can go back to the podcast from last week where I kind of went into it. I can't separate the book from the show. I was excited. It's funny because the quest for them to get to the island dominated that, story B the entire time, and had no connection to story A. And we talked about it at length that it would have made more sense to have somehow had a story B that showed how good it used to be versus story A, which showed how bad it had gotten. However, I would have been just as excited by, for waiting. And waiting also does something to you, right? Because when TV shows used to write for the weekly format, there almost was in a lot of cases, not always, there was part 1s and part 2s that happened instantaneously. There was a time that passed in between those episodes, roughly the same. There's a line in Buffy where, something happens in Buffy the Vampire Slayer where, another, bad guy attacks and she goes, must be Tuesday, and she actually kind of jokes about the fact that on Tuesdays, everything seems to happen, kind of acknowledging that there is a span of time that happens in between each episode. And that sometimes makes the reviewing experience not as easy. So the answer is, I don't know. But I would have been, what's that?
It was a long way to go to get to the bottom of that thought.
But but my point being though, is that while I don't know, yes, it would have changed my perception of it because it has to, because time will do that no matter what.
Okay. I guess.
Do you want to know how many people watch Falcon and Winter Soldier?
I already know it, but I want you to say it.
But I love it because I'll make arguments, by the way, where I'm like, well, it made a lot of money. And you're like, well, but it wasn't good. And then now you're like, but look, lots of people watch it. Anyway, during the week of April,
the argument wasn't whether or not it's going to be successful. Everybody knows it's going to be successful. It's on Disney Plus, right? It's gonna, and it's part of a greater, franchise of monster, amalgamated franchise of the MCU, which has remained viable even through the 100 years pandemic that we go through. So of course it's going to make money, but were people engaging with it was the argument.
Well, here, actually, this is interesting, right? So during the week of April 12th to the 18th, the Falcon and Winter Soldier released the 5th of its 6 episodes titled Truth. That week, the show ended up topping Nielsen's streaming charts with 855 million minutes viewed. The system itself counts views as a user that watches 2 minutes or more of a show or a film on a streaming service. So far, this is only the second time in history a Disney Plus program has topped the Nielsen charts, with the first being the 2020 Pixar film Soul. So it's interesting, right? So it's not a question of whether or not they're engaging with it. They're literally turning it on for 2 minutes. So that makes it, that's a fascinating
just
metric.
Up, dude. Be smart. Be smart. No one's going to go onto a streaming service and only stay there for 2 minutes and then bail. No one's. Come on.
I'm gonna have my watch.
Yeah. All right. Count down.
No. It does. Look, it has a total of 855 million minutes viewed. So yeah, people watch it. Look, I even said on the show by episode 5, I was more engaged with it.
But this is
flattened
the crazy
out
thing
again.
that I'm talking about. This is the exact crazy thing. It's the dichotomy of what I'm talking about. Like, it's like, okay, we do these things week to week because we want to keep people engaged, right? And then I'm like, well, you have the format's not made for that because the way they're making this content isn't.
But
they
know it is. Disney Plus knows
the way they're making this content isn't made for that. And here's the proof of it. It's like you watch this thing and you're like, it just doesn't do anything. It does not do anything until 5 hours in, and you're like, oh, it's doing something for me. Well, yeah, because the way it was made, the ebbs and flow, the action, the rise and fall of action is delineated in a completely different way. It's delineated over a matter of like 6 weeks, as opposed to the 3-act structure that would rise and fall action and pathos and all that other stuff per episode, per installment.
No, you're blaming that. I'm actually not.
I'm not blaming
I just
that.
don't think the first few episodes were handled very good.
Basing that off of my own personal observations of how some of this stuff is made. Like look at it's like learning all the wrong information from the Game of Thrones phenomenon, right? Like the same thing I would say Jupiter's Legacy did incorrectly, if such a thing can be said. They basically focused on the epicness of how many characters are involved and the interconnectivity with these characters and their inner struggles and their turmoils with each other, which and it didn't really give us the spectacle. It just got. I mean, look, these are superheroes. The high idea is these superheroes came together. They discovered or were
given powers. Whatever.
Were granted these powers, right? And so they went about trying to change the world. But the show that was 8 episodes long didn't think we needed to see any of that stuff.
Right.
In the meantime, the current story is that the old code's not working because the villains have upped their game so much that the heroes are actually vulnerable adhering to the code. Which, again, they decide we don't need to see. They'll just tell us about it. And it's like, what are you guys doing? Like, you're spending literally hundreds of millions of dollars to try to make this, this superhero, the superhero franchise a viable franchise, but you're skipping out on the spectacle. You're skipping out on the easiest part of it. Give us something to see. Give us Ant-Man breaking an airplane to pieces. Every now and then you've got to succumb to the childishness of the childish nature of the thing you're making. Every now and then you have to show King Kong drop kick a Tyrannosaurus Rex. You just I get it. I think, but if going into Netflix, they have a formula. Disney Plus now has a formula. They're not the same formulas. So again, I'm just saying.
And let's also say this.
You're thinking you're forgetting about The Boys. You're forgetting about Amazon doing.
Amazon drops 3 all at once.
Yeah, distributing, but then they go
weekly.
back to a week-to-week formats. But the stories are not made for that. That's what some people are complaining about. That's why you get a lot of people who don't interact with it until it's all over, and they wait so that they can binge it. I know quite a few people who are doing that, and there are articles on it. It seems like there's no interactivity or there's no trending on any of this stuff, and then people start trending it weeks and weeks after quote unquote it's finished, because now they could just go in at their leisure and see it all in one go. So I mean, it is what it is. It
is what it is. All right, let's move on here. We've got the next one. We've got some we got some sneak peeks. We got some content.
Falcon and Winter Soldier is a huge success. That's all the point with that.
Yes. Thank you. For a poorly made show, it did very well.
Thank you. Doesn't matter.
Loki versus Black Widow. Loki Tom Hiddleston gets into more hijinks in a new MTV sneak peek, or Black Widow's MTV sneak peek puts Scarlett Johansson at center stage.
I don't care. I don't care about either one. It's Black Widow.
Ooh, all right. That was Loki a little. Yet. That was. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting
because we've been
Loki.
waiting for Black Widow for like 6 years. You
love
know,
it.
And it's like that movie better be amazing. And like, look, I think
it's so unfair to it, isn't it? Though.
Yeah, I think Loki's going to be like the breakout series of Disney Plus MCU weekly content. I think that's going to be the one that blows the hinges off, right?
Yeah,
because people. There's nothing that we don't really know much about it. It looks like it's huge world building stuff. It looks like it's pretty.
I will tell you that will be the first movie I go see in theaters in 2 years.
I'm talking about Loki.
Oh, sorry. Now I was talking about Black Widow. I'm excited for that. I'm excited for.
All right, never mind. You
weren't
keep
going. I have to get the. You say what's funny is you said to do Black Widow, so I'm bringing up all the information about Black Widow.
Because I think Loki is going to be the breakout series of the. I used words. I used the English.
I know. You're talking to all of them out there.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm the one pressed with getting all the stuff in here. All right. During the 2021 MTV Movie and TV Awards, Scarlett Johansson made a remote appearance during the telecast to introduce this new, exciting sneak peek at her Black Widow movie. Sneak peek continues to highlight the exciting fact that audiences will have the opportunity to return to movie theaters this July for another adventure in the MCU for the first time since Far From Home in July 2019. The sneak peek. Now, what did you think of it? Are you excited to see Scarlett Johansson and the rest of the cast team up for the first big screen MCU adventure?
Yeah, for the 99th time, sure. Love to see it. It would be great. Love to see it.
I got to tell you, it's
I don't really actually think this movie exists. I think it's just a trailer.
It's a figment of our imagination.
Pieces. I think it's a bunch of action set pieces strung together. I think it's like an old canon movies trick to make us think it's a giant, viable epic where there's nothing, it doesn't exist at all. It's like, remember Tron?
Yeah.
Before Tron Legacy came out, right?
Yeah.
And the way they were able to greenlight the film is they made a trailer for a movie that they hadn't made yet. Then everyone was like, ooh, everyone's interacting with this trailer. You know, this trailer's trending. Let's make the movie. And then no one went to see the movie.
You know what's interesting about this too? I'm wondering if it's going to be like a Dune-like change of heart that Disney's going to have, because they're offering it same day, but they did that back when the vaccine distribution was still kind of starting and they weren't sure, but they made a decision. They're like, no, we are going to start the MCU over again, essentially by offering it both in theaters and then, for Disney Plus Premium. I wonder if they're going to have a change of heart now too. I wonder if that is you're only going to be able to.
I mean, like I care to the extent that I'd like to actually finally see it, but I'm it's moved around so much. I don't really care. I don't really even think it's gonna. And the other problem with the Black Widow film is that it's a prequel, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm sure in the MCU's own unique fashion, it's going to set up a lot of things, that are to come.
Yeah.
It's going to give us little important pieces of information to fill in the gaps of what's come between.
Yeah.
But then again, we already know that character has died. You know? So this is the origins of that character. It's going to flesh some things out. It's much needed. It's overdue for a very important character in the MCU. But, it is stretching it a little. But like, oh, come see a sequel of a character who's already passed on, who's already been unceremoniously killed off in the franchise.
This is not to say that, Chris Evans is old or that Scarlett Johansson's old, but exploring the fact that these are actors and actresses playing roles, you do kind of have to plan for the next, what do we do when, all of a sudden, it's the Hugh Jackman thing, right? It's like, damn, I got to go on a chicken diet, to even match the physicality that these roles kind of take. They've killed off Robert Downey Jr., who's obviously getting older, but he could still do Iron Man. That's my thing. Chris Evans not very old. He could still do it. Scarlett Johansson.
He was in his late 40s and 50s before the Iron Man started.
No, I know, but he's still he's still within looks wise, can still pull it off if need be. But it's like they almost kind of sat there saying, look, these actors have a shelf life of 10 years, 10 to 15 years. Plus the actors themselves, want to go out and venture and do different things, which then,
I have not, I don't think I have said anything to the contrary of that. Like, what is,
I know.
Like, yeah. So what do you mean?
No, I'm just saying it's fascinating in a way that this Black Widow movie is now hitting, and it's a prequel because they killed her off. Versus in the case of Captain America, they're basically preparing for the eventuality that we don't, that Steve Rogers that the actor who plays Steve Rogers is going to be too old to play Steve Rogers. So they literally made him old. Robert Downey Jr. is getting to an age where, he needs to move on. So we're going to definitively say he's dead right now. Both can be reversed. It's not as if there are final decisions, and we know comic books in general. I mean, death, what does death really mean? But the Black Widow, same thing. It's like, all right, Scarlett Johansson, I guess as an actress, she wants to move on, but she really didn't, because now she gets her own solo film. So it's an interesting question as to why they killed her off in Avengers Endgame, and whether or not it's truly going to mean she's dead.
I don't think it's all right. Okay.
Right. I'm just curious.
Sure she's dead. I mean, everybody comes back, but I mean, it's just, it might not be a scheme. Someone had to die.
Yeah.
There's some of those characters had to actually die. I mean, we did lose characters, supposedly permanently, and all of them came back. I mean, we lost Gamora and kind of got her back. We lost Loki and kind of got him back.
Right. Well, that's my point, though. So it'll be interesting to see. So anyway, hey, look, I'm excited. I'm excited for the film.
I'm sure you are.
Let's switch gears a little bit to the DC Universe. Snyder Cut versus Justice League news. Justice League Gal Gadot confirms Joss Whedon threatened her career during reshoots, or Zack Snyder talks Justice League sequels, says Warner Brothers is aggressively anti-Snyder.
Well, that answers that. So you go for the Gal Gadot thing.
Oh, okay. Ooh.
I mean, if basically the other article is going to say, hey, I had a bunch of great ideas and they don't want to do any of them. So, I mean, that answers its own question, doesn't it?
You're absolutely right. So this is coming from the Beat website. Also, we live in a post Zack Snyder Justice League world, and while fans that rallied for the Snyder Cut to be released are happy to see, this is from Heroic Hollywood, sorry, to see the director's creative vision restored on HBO Max. There are many discussions over the tumultuous reshoots that were helmed by director Joss Whedon after Zack Snyder departed, and that comes from Diana Prince herself, Gal Gadot, in an interview by Israeli outlet N12, where she confirmed tensions were so high that Joss Whedon threatened the trajectory of her career. She said, he kind of threatened my career and said if I did something, he would make my career miserable, and I just took care of it instead. So that was a brief comment into this.
I just took care of it instead? That's weird.
Yeah.
Weird. What does that mean? He threatened my career, and I just took care of it myself.
Which was launching into the stratosphere when the first standalone Wonder Woman movie hit theaters to critical and commercial success.
I guess she means I took care of my career.
Yeah,
instead?
I think so. I think that's exactly what it was.
Wow. All right. English. Remember English? I remember English.
Well, I mean, look, when this is the issue with a lot of these things, right? The soundbite doesn't match up to the article. And so
that's why there should be journalism instead of people, instead of people transcribing sound bites and then trying to pass that off as journalism. That's neither here nor there.
Well, is it newsworthy? I mean, is it newsworthy that he is
okay? But what's the article? What point is the article trying to make about
that? She confirms he did threaten her career.
Okay, well,
so it's a confirmation that Joss Whedon's kind of a jerk.
He's not a good guy.
Yeah.
Or not. Like maybe he is a good guy. He's not the good guy he painted himself to be. Right? Yeah. He doesn't have the image that he has, that he has cultivated for those last 20 to 25 years. Right.
Yeah.
And then it is what it is. I watched an interview with Charisma Carpenter the other night. I think last night, and where they tried to coax that out of her. They tried to coax her into elaborating on it. She was actually very she was very professional about it, and she was like, I've said everything I had to say about it. She didn't go into like actual details, stuff like that, but she did talk about that. She was more surprised that other people came forward.
Yeah.
After she had said something, that nobody else was gonna stay industry silent on this particular thing, and everybody kind of backed each other up. And she said she did it mostly for Ray Fisher, because she and he had developed a friendship, and he was getting raked over the coals on it. And so, and I mean, almost single-handedly, she changed public opinion about Joss, because it was kind of a, well, did he or didn't he? We'll see. Who knows? Who knows really what happened? And then when she comes forward, other people kind of poke their heads up and go, yeah, there was some stuff. Trachtenberg was like, yeah, I didn't want to ever be alone with him. That's stuff like that's pretty resounding. So, right. I mean, look, doesn't mean that he's actually this. It's still one side of a story. It's still,
well, in today's climate, Joss has already been branded guilty, and look, it looks as if in this particular case he is guilty of being a jerk. It is.
It's the medium in and of itself. People like claim it's the climate, but it's a medium. Like, it's just like if you're declared a genius, it's like, well, I don't know if what you did was genius, but everybody thinks you're a genius. And so now you're perceived a genius, you get genius status. It's the same as people think you're scum, It's not, are you scum? Probably not, but you've got scum status because of the way people perceive it. It's all about the perception. That's why people pay such a huge, reverence to Twitter, to trending. Yeah. Every time I see something trend on Twitter, it's always maybe 6,000 to 8,000 tweets in a country, in a world of 7 billion people, in a country of 300 million people. I got 3,000 tweets, and suddenly that's trending. That's what the world is thinking. It's not. Right. So I'm sure Josh will make a comeback eventually. Mel Gibson didn't get destroyed.
I don't know if he will.
Mel Gibson is still a viable entity. He's not what he once was, but he's still there. And and we have recordings of his egregiousness, So people will come back. All right.
We'll see. All right. Some Spider-Man Far From Home news, and then we will wrap up with a little trailer versus trailer. Andrew Garfield says never say never on Spider-Man Return and No Way Home versus Spider-Man No Way Home, listing hints at Kirsten Dunst's return. Which one do you want to dive
Sadly,
into?
I don't give a damn about either one of them. I like, oh, maybe I'll be in it. To Kristen Dunst, maybe she'll be in it. Okay, done. Either one of those is done. What do you want to do?
Nah.
Like, we just don't know. We don't. The movie's months away. Maybe
I like it,
and we won't.
I like it. No, we'll skip ahead. I like it. We'll skip ahead. Trailer versus trailer. Stranger Things. Netflix drops new 11-centric teaser for season 4, or first trailer and poster arrive for Tom Hardy's Venom: Let There Be Carnage. Which one do you want to dive into?
I'll take Stranger Things, because I'm not a huge fan of the Venom franchise. Even though I did see the Venom trailer, cute.
It's zany, man. I there's something about that whole series that they just don't give an F, and it's actually kind of refreshing. I don't know how else to describe it as to why I'm so.
But on the other hand, I did see the 11-centric trailer, and it's crap. It's trash.
Here we go. New footage
just a whole
seems
bunch
to reveal
of vignette scenes and a bunch of sound bites in the background, and Matthew Modine. I mean, who cares, dude? Really?
The eerie new footage seems to reveal more of the facility 11 was kept in, along with a handful of other enhanced children. The teaser also shows off the return of Matthew Modine's Dr. Martin Brenner, who speaks to the children, explaining he has something very special planned for you, before asking 11 if she's listening. The question originally was, are you excited to see the return of Matthew Modine's Dr. Brenner?
No.
But I'm wondering, are we going to get, because, is this a truth or trash moment that we're going to get more of the kids? And because that was the one giant complaint I had, and I think a lot of people had about season 2, that even though the outcome to showing 11's, 2-episode jaunt into New York City was weird. It did set the stage for there are other 11s out there. There's number 10 and 9 and 8 and 15 and, all these different, characters who have these special abilities as well. So I wonder if they're going to be diving into that now more and more in this season. I think everyone's obviously going to be, how will Hopper, we know Hopper's alive thanks to the teasers. How will Hopper get back to Erie, Indiana? But you wonder if that's actually going to be plot B, or if that's going to be resolved very quickly. And the real, story A of this season is going to be the kids.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, they can't lean too deeply into it because they've got many other characters that will not be serviced by just going, primarily into 11's background.
Yeah.
So, and the Hopper thing, obviously, I mean, the fact that he's alive is a big deal. The fact that he's apparently stuck in Russia is a big deal. Although I suspect he'll just use the underground, the upside down to get back. Which is great. I'm happy that they're not going to string us along on that. And they showed it right in the beginning. But then again, that could be indicative of the fact that, okay, we showed you that, but we're really not going to cover him this season, Right. So who knows? I mean, who knows? I'm interested in 11, but it's Weapon X. It's all these other things all over again. It's like, we were doing these crazy experiments on these kids, which gave them wild powers. And now we've, now those powers have gotten out of hand. And these kids are, that is a trope. It is very 80s.
Of course.
It's fine. It's supposed to be, but I mean, it's not that.
Well, it's also world building in a sense,
was
right?
Never really that interesting. Did you really care how Wolverine got his claws? Someone did some crap to him. Now he's got claws. He's running around like, I got claws now, and no one goes, I can cut, or I can get doors open. Okay, you really want you get into the character in his later years. You don't, when you find out what happened, it's always lackluster.
Yeah,
it's like, they put him in a tank and they put adamantium into him, and he almost died, and then he got out, and he was mad about it, and then he killed a whole bunch of people and he left. Okay, so that's the intricacy of the story, which is almost the 11 story.
Yeah.
We gave her a bunch of drugs, and then we enhanced her ESP powers or whatever, and then we opened the portal, and then monsters came out, and a lot of people got killed, and then she ran away. That's the whole story. There's not. I mean, you could elaborate on Matthew Modine. And you could go into his home life that he lost his family in a fire, and
what if there's an adversary? What if there's an adversarial relationship now that might develop? Someone as strong as 11. I mean, that's your heroes are only as good as your villains.
Well, that's fine, but I mean, even if you got one of those, the story would still be the same. We all got together. They put us all in this room, and they gave us some drugs, and then they made us move cars with our minds and stuff like that. And
maybe they'll get together and complain that things used to be better in the older days. It was easier.
Huh?
I said maybe they'll all get in a room together and say things were better in the older days.
Yeah, and that'll be exciting, right? That'll make for incredible television, wouldn't it?
You know what will make for an incredible podcast? Gates McFadden. That was our Pop Luck segment. Coming up next, Gates McFadden InvestiGates. See how they did that? It's a play on words. New podcast coming from the Cell Company. We get to talk to her all about it.
You're
and talk to her about some Star Trek stuff as well when we return. Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. We have an amazing disruptor. She's disrupting her own life, in fact, by jumping into a brand new role. We have from Star Trek fame, Gates McFadden. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
And I wanted to preface that by saying she's disrupting her whole life because she has gone from being actress to podcast host. You have your brand new podcast, coming out with the nacelle company. Actually, it's out already by now, which is great.
Oh yeah, right. It is right.
Yeah.
We're doing this in advance. Sorry.
Yeah,
No, you're good. Gates McFadden InvestiGates. Who do you think you are? And it is basically, the podcast is a 10-episode limited series based out of Nacellecast Studios, the new state-of-the-art podcast studio. Give us the log line. Give us the synopsis of what people can expect from this podcast.
Give us the synopsis. Well, there are. First of all, it might be a tip-off. It's more, who do you think you are? That's my little take on it. A little more sassy. We have conversations. It's conversations with my good friends from all those years of Star Trek, and there's cast members, and there's a lot of memories, laughing. We don't talk about the show. I mean, it comes up occasionally, but it's about just our life as friends and people, and we go different places, and sometimes something comes up, like at the end, where I'm laughing hysterically because one little comment leads into remembering something, and then Brent and I have this moment where I swear I don't think I've laughed so hard in years. But with everybody, like with Wil Wheaton, he's so awesome with podcasting himself, and he knows how to interview, and I mean, he's just like, he's the best, and I adore my space son. There's just no mistake. And so for him, I wanted to make it a conversation in some way, but I didn't want it to be awkward for him to be asking me questions in a weird way. So I had us play games. So we started with Never Have I Ever. And, we talked about a lot of things, like, when did you lose your virginity? And, we went places. Wow. And then we got into ethical questions. And I'm telling you, like, we're close. He comes over to my house, whatever but I learned a lot about him, and I'm sure he learned more than he wanted to know about me. And it might upset people, but there you go. That's the point of it, is trying to ask questions that maybe people aren't always asked, and have people just share things about their lives.
You have Jonathan Frakes, you have LeVar Burton, Wil Wheaton, Brett Spiner, Marina Sirtis, Michael Dorn.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Yep. I'm going to butcher names. That is rule. We went over our rules before this podcast started, and I forgot my number one rules. I will butcher.
You have to forgive him. He's kind of an outsider.
I will butcher everyone's name. Even if I know your name, I'm going to butcher it. It's just, that's what he said.
It butchers my name, and I've been on the show for 5 years. So
that's tragic. That's tragic. Well, no, they're all there. And
a great list.
People from Voyager. I've got John Delancey and Bob Picardo, Nana Visitor, and I'm hoping to get Whoopi.
Okay.
I've got 14 in the can, and we'll just see where it goes. I hope people enjoy it. I hope they're kind. No,
Don't be kind.
I've never done anything like this, and I turned it down twice. This is kind of like a way. I'm someone who's like, oh, come on, why would anyone want to listen to me? And then Brian, the CEO of Nacelle Company, Brian Volk Weiss, who is awesome, I have to say. I dig this man. He's really wonderful. I'm like, why is he talking to this old lady, me? He's so cool. Anyway, he said, no, you got to think about it. Come on, I think it'd be great. And I said, we're not talking Star Trek. None of my friends would even answer the phone if they thought I was going to ask him a Star Trek question. He's
sure.
Like, okay, we'll talk about anything you want. Anyway, so I'm down to the wire, and he's come back and asked me again. And this is what I've said. The last time I turned something down twice, and then I was lucky enough to have them come back and ask a third time, was the Star Trek show. Yes, because I didn't know about Star Trek. I had never seen Star Trek.
Sure. So
that changed my life in such a good way. So I went, man, what is wrong with you, Gates? God, get you've got something that comes to you from the universe, and why do they have to knock 3 times? So
I think you have a good filtering system there. Actually, that actually is fantastic.
Yeah, it probably helps you more than you think it did.
Hassan wishes I asked him at least twice so he could have turned me down.
Well, okay, but this is the truth now. The final tipping point reason I said yes was, so I'm with my friends, Aida and Tracy, and we're sitting on their porch. We're social distance. It's in COVID. And they have a dog, Luna, who's so adorable. And Luna was a rescue, just very scared, doesn't like to pet anybody, had never let me pet her, never taken a biscuit from me, whatever. So anyway, we were talking about it, and I'm going, well, I don't know. Hey, let's let Luna decide. And I said, give me 2 biscuits. And I got 2 dog biscuits. And I put them down. And I said, if she takes the left hand, I'm doing it. If she takes the right hand, I'm not. And I swear to God, we thought she was going to just not do anything. But she actually, she embraced it. And she went,
wow,
right and left. No, maybe not. Maybe. Oh, I don't know. She could. And it was just like my mind. She was doing my mind. And then finally she just snapped the one on the left. And I went, I'm doing it. I am doing it.
So the universe was playing with you.
Yeah.
What's it like, because obviously you've been on the other end of things, right? Being interviewed as part of Star Trek, as part of any theatrical role. Being interviewed has its own quirks, but now you're actually taking the interviewer chair. You're first chair, as we like to call it. You were first chair in all this.
That sounds nice. Okay.
It does, right? It's not bad.
It's not as good as the captain's chair, but it does sound nice.
Yeah. So you're first chair. Like, what was the transition like for you? And what were some of the quirks that you kind of, you felt as you took on this new role?
I think I was afraid for any silence because I was such a novice that I didn't realize, well, you can just edit that spot together. It's like, duh. But I'm like, don't have any empty spots. Keep it rolling. And so, then that's sort of a tendency anyway. When I'm slightly nervous, like even here, I've got a faster energy. I always admire people who, when they're doing interviews, they're like, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was a good time, and they're kind of, yeah, let me tell you a story. I'm like, yeah, okay, I have 5 things I can say.
Is that something that, as the podcast progressed, kind of went away? Was there more of a relaxation, or was it just, or did it always start out the same? And then
did it feel like pulling teeth the entire 14 episodes that you did?
No, I loved, my favorite moments are moments where we start playing along with each other, and it happens with certain ones. People will notice the ones that it happens, and like, I'll give you one example. Like LeVar, he went with this improv little thing in the beginning, and it made the whole thing work, and it just was great. It cut the ice, and we laughed, and I was like, okay, we're on the same wavelength, and that was really cool. When that happens, it's awesome. But sometimes there are technical difficulties because I couldn't do it in the studio. Well, I did some in the studio, but then COVID got bad. Yeah. And sometimes, like the Wi-Fi, when I did it with Marina, there was a delay. So sometimes we spoke over each other, that kind of thing. And so it's not like you're not listening, because actually we were very connected.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. So you miss things that way, that when you're in the studio, it doesn't happen that way because you're looking at each other.
Yeah. Now you mentioned, Star Trek wasn't the number one topic at all, but did you end up, just based on your conversations, getting into that universe a little bit?
Sometimes yes, and sometimes no.
Yeah.
We are a very close cast, which is such a gift. I mean, they are just the greatest people, and we all think we're pretty funny, and we all have had so many bizarre and wonderful experiences that there's a lot to draw from. And it just depends, Everybody has different rhythms, and you know how it is when you're interviewing someone, you yourself have to be in a certain frame of mind to be as open and curious as, you might not be that day. And maybe the next day you're more curious. It really, so that's been interesting to observe.
Yeah.
I think there are so many things I could do better, and, maybe I'll have the chance to do that, but I hope that at least, I think I show off my friends pretty well. I think they come off pretty well, and I think that was the most important thing to me. I cut a lot of my stories out because I think, I felt a pressure to make sure the conversation kept rolling.
Yeah.
And also as a kid, I always was pushed to perform by my parents. And so I think it's one of the things that drives me crazy about myself is that I just, I'm trying like too hard,
Okay, so I have like 2 geek questions.
Okay, go for it.
Very, very simple. Knowing the friction that is pretty famous that happened in amongst several other the Star Trek casts of the Star Trek shows. I mean, it's not that deep a question. How blessed do you feel that you guys like famously get along with each other? You guys are famously tight. So yeah, I'm sure that made making that show much easier. That the strength and the bond that you had between each other. And I'm just wondering if you get the vibe off of some of the other cast members that you've interviewed, that it wasn't that cohesive a unit for them on their shows, their prospective shows.
Well,
you don't have to dish.
No,
dish, please, dish. I'm clicking my Twitter right now.
Well, I think we always did get along, and I think that's because we had similar backgrounds in many ways. There were so many of us who were theater actors, and like Patrick, before I even started shooting, had gone to see me do a play that I was doing. So there was that. I think we all had senses of humor. I think we also, though, in the beginning, there were a lot of nerves and, things happened, but we ultimately weathered everything. And now we're on a group text. And some of that happened because of the pandemic,
Yeah.
We missed seeing each other at the cons because once we had the Calgary 25th anniversary of Next Gen was when we all started to be around and see each other. We had all kind of gone and done different things. Like I shot something in Hawaii, and I went to France. I have a place in France that I went in this tiny little village. And so there were a lot of diverse things that we were all doing, but we started to see each other again. And it was like, oh yeah, we really do get along. We really do laugh. So we would have that was one of the reasons to go do conventions is we could all go out to dinner afterwards and laugh ourselves silly and have breakfast. So that is when we really started even bonding more because you had a little distance, you were doing different things. And that's been wonderful. The one, I see Patrick the least of anyone because he's so busy and, he had been traveling so much doing different projects. But I talked to LeVar Brent, Jonathan Marina, Michael Dorn all the time, and Denise all the time. Will Whedon. Like I was doing an interview the other day and I got a text from Will during the interview. We're close and it's a wonderful gift. It is so great. I would say that is a sustaining friendship that we all we know each other's faults and foibles and we know each other's strengths. And there's a lot of love. So that's wonderful. I know that a lot of people talk about how other shows didn't have it that way. But it's not like there was hatred on all the other shows. And I think these people have now sort of resolved some of their differences. It's a really good energy in the room when you go to these cons and there's a lot of Trek actors from different shows. People are pretty progressive and smart and want the world to be a better place. And there's a lot of activism within the casts. And so there are things that have brought all of us together. I mean, look at George Takei. George Takei, sorry.
You fit right in on the show now.
Yeah.
You're not honorary. You're third chair. So there you go.
I mean, he's amazing how he keeps working towards the future, making it a better place. Yeah. So I think that's pretty cool. And William Shatner never stops. It's also been amazing just even getting to know them some. I had gotten to know Leonard before either George or Bill, but
no, he was on the show, the first episode, right? Yeah.
No, that was McCoy.
That was McCoy. Yeah, I'm thinking
Yeah.
Leonard McCoy.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. DeForest Kelly.
DeForest, yeah.
Who was so sweet. But I mean, again, I just knew him, casually. I didn't really know him. Not that I know George or Bill, but I have listened to things that Bill has said, and what a life, and very articulate man. I have enormous respect for him and what he's done for the gay community. And it's really the activism of all of the actors in the different shows is extraordinary, I think. And I don't know anybody who just really doesn't get along at all. Personally, I don't of any of the shows. There's no one who I think, oh God, there's so and so. Look out, just doesn't happen.
You guys were legendary for getting along, though. I mean, I don't know how much of that was PR, but you guys were, that's the reason. That was the basis for my question, is that you guys like a legendary cohesion with each other. So,
well, that's nice to hear.
You mentioned the Comic-Con experience. I mean, Star Trek fans can be very like obsessive and very like detail oriented. I mean, it's Comic-Con fans in general. Before the pandemic, what I'd read was that you actually really embraced the Comic-Con experience more now than back then. Talk to us about that, and how has the fan interaction been, and your connection to the fan base. Obviously it's going to be pre-pandemic because of the interruption we've had in the past year and a half, but pre-pandemic, what was the connection to the fan base, and how did you feel about it at that point?
Well, it's funny. In the beginning, for example, I love doing cameos.
Mm-hmm.
The part I love is that someone will give me some suggestions of what the situation is. Those are my favorite ones. Or they sincerely need a boost because they've been sick or really something's going on. And so I actually love taking the time to come up with my thoughts about it. And I want it to be authentic. But I also can have fun. And not everybody would maybe enjoy this, but one of my favorite ones was this couple that they couldn't, because of the pandemic, they had to cancel their honeymoon, and they were going to have this, or anniversary honeymoon, something like that. And they were going to go to Barbados, and it was going to be this great thing. And they were like, so we just need a cheer up cameo. So I put Jimmy Buffett on, and I kind of made this fake Mai Tai cocktail, and I had my hat on, and I have made it, it look like I was on in the sun in some beautiful place. And I'm like, you guys, where are you? I'm in the Bahamas. I'm waiting for you. Like I've got, and I was able to do this thing that they laughed, and it was funny, not so funny when I told you, but it was funny on the doing. and things like that I enjoy doing, because it's sort of, if you can bring a little happiness into somebody, or a little smile or laughter, that's kind of nice. And people have gone through such hard times. I'm so fortunate. I really have no right to complain about anything except for this podcast that you're doing. But so I really can appreciate if I can do one thing that makes somebody feel a little bit better. It's really it's a pleasure for me to do that. I think fans in general, I used to be afraid of fans.
Yeah.
And that was because of personal experience. I had been stalked for a couple of years by somebody. So I got really, I just was afraid of going into big rooms in case I'd meet this person again. Yeah. But then I was able to relax about it. And fans are really lovely. And we have smart fans. Yes, some of them are obsessive, but they're also super smart, the way my space son is. They're technically way beyond me in their understanding of technology.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. You learn. You go to one place, like you go to Utah, and you see the fans there, versus going to Chicago, going to another city, going down to Florida.
Yeah.
I feel it gives me a chance to know this country a little bit. And even though all of our fans seem to be really interested in science and are nice, there are big social differences that you see. And that's interesting, because activism is important. It's important to know what's going on in the country, and, to try to share conversations about things like that. It's important.
Yeah, it really is. And it's nice to be able to have, we do the comic, and we do the Comic Cons also for the comic book side of what we do, and And that's something that I was always grateful for. I was able to kind of hit almost all the corners of the country, and you get a different experience. Getting back to the podcast real quick. Is it going to be limited? It's your friends right now, and it seems to be hovering around the Star Trek universe. Any thoughts of expanding outward into different types of guests?
Well, it could go any number of places. Absolutely. Like I once emailed with an astronaut when he was on the space station.
Oh wow, yeah. See, that'd be great.
To talk about that and why it was important. I mean, he was definitely having a Picard moment there, so that's why I was Crusher. But that's kind of really interesting because he's the real deal and I'm the pretend deal.
Yeah.
And why is that relationship important? And it actually is an important relationship because, as he had said, if I hadn't had sort of the image of Star Trek, the possibility, it makes me believe it's going to be okay. It can happen. We'll get to the space station, and that's pretty interesting. So I think we just have to wait and see what happens. As I said, I have 14 in the can. I'm hoping to talk to Whoopi, and we'll see how it breaks. I have to. I said to myself after Luna the dog dared me to do it, I said, okay, I've got to be willing to just do it, give it my all. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, okay, it was a try. It's better than just staying home and doing nothing. So that's what's up. And I've been having a good time.
Well, we love
Yeah,
we love that you have taken some time out today to tell us about the podcast. Where can people find the podcast? Where can they consume it?
It's going to be on all of the, it's on Apple, Spotify, it's everywhere that is the normal place, and it goes live on the 12th of May. And it's InvestiGates. Who do you think you are? I mean, really, let's think about this. And
it's going to be a weekly release.
Yeah, that's right. That's
a new episode. We're 2 weeks into the run, so very excited, and we caught the first episode. Was amazing. So thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And somehow Luna, I don't think you did the biscuit test with Luna to be on our show. I think she might have picked the other biscuits, so we're grateful for that as well. And you are welcome back anytime. And Hassan will teach you some bass when he does.
You guys are great. I'm serious. Okay, I got to learn the bass. I got to. It's on my bucket list.
Oh boy. Well, you will not have a better teacher than Hassan, even though he hates when I promote him in this way, but he is the best. He is the best.
All right, you guys stay cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
When we come back, more Rogue Wave podcast. Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast. I want to thank Gates McFadden and the Nacelle Company for coming on. Awesome interview. As a side note, this was off air. She wants Hassan to teach her electric bass. I don't know how that's going to happen, but we're going to make this happen. You're going to teach her how to play bass guitar. That's not going to happen, is it?
All right.
It's not going to happen.
I'm all in. I think she was 100% sincere in wanting me to actually come to Los Angeles and show her how to play.
Or Zoom. Can be done over Zoom.
I could do it over Zoom.
We're going to make a campaign right now. Teach Gates. Hassan teaches Gates bass. Because as you know, Hassan is the bass player in all the theme music on this show. All right. Keeping with the Hassan centric theme, this segment I love. I turn it over to my cohort in crime, the Lord of the Radio himself. This is Hassan Godwin's Rogue Rage. Have at it.
Yeah, but it's not really rage.
No, it's it's rage in the cutesy term. It can be positive. It's just all the rage that's going on in the pop culture universe.
Yeah, according to letting Hassan. You know, like this. I think it's a false advertising because people expect it to be like a a tidal wave of emotion and stuff like it. It's not really.
I don't know what people expect, quite frankly. They expect it to be better than Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah, but nothing is better than Falcon and Winter Soldier, so, keep your expectations low. That's what I say. Anyway, doesn't matter. Look, I touched upon it in the previous segments. The streaming services are getting out of hand, and I don't think we are better off now than we were when we had cable. I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the way the business model is set up, they're just going to out now tell you, hey, we're charging you more this month. We're charging you more this month. We're upping it. Now, it's always upping their gain by maybe a half percentage point. It's like, well, it's going to go up $1, But, I mean, that all adds up. If you're paying for 3 or 4 or maybe 6 services now, and all of them are negligible at $6.
Right.
And so you're like, nah, whatever. But that's $30. That's a substantial amount of money that's coming out of your pocket on a regular basis, right? And not to mention whatever you're paying in order to maintain your Wi-Fi or your, the service in the first place. So like with cable, you paid for cable. They came and installed cable. They put the cable in and you watched cable, right? You didn't have to pay for any ancillary service that would facilitate.
That was all worked in the deal.
Yeah, except for maybe electricity. You had to pay for electricity to
you did have to pay extra for HBO though, like the premium channels.
Yeah, well, I mean that's what I'm talking about. But I mean the way things are now, and then you can if you get a satellite, if you get a satellite antenna, you could still watch regular television without a streaming service, right? That's good, right? And that's free. That's absolutely free,
right?
And that's a lot of channels. That's a decent amount. That's a you can entertain yourself at least with that. But if you want to see any of these other services, you gotta pay out the nose for it. If you want to see, content, like, all right, you have Amazon. Amazon sometimes will hub these other services for you, right? So if you have say HBO, you could get HBO through Amazon. If you want Showtime, you could get Showtime through Amazon.
Right.
You could get so you have Amazon, and then you have to pay a little extra for these other services, these other channels, but you don't have to pay for the channel in and of themselves.
Right.
Now there's Paramount. Paramount is going to be a big deal very soon. They've got a lot of content on it, right?
That's
including MTV and some of these other
Yep.
Some of these other franchises that we are very familiar with that have gone by the wayside. And they have a lot of older content in it that would make people happy.
Yeah.
Then comes HBO Max, right? And they're trying to make whole kinds of, new deals and inroads into current contemporary entertainment and make, they're trying to make a movie theater or theater going into something that's completely obsolete. Right. I don't blame them. I don't like the practice, but hey, Blockbuster did it to the mom and pop, video stores, and then Netflix did it to Blockbuster. It's fair is fair, right? So it's just it's a war. But are we really getting more for the more we're paying? That's what I wonder. That was the same argument I had with him. There were people talking about the foreshortened seasons that we're getting of television shows. And it started out that we were, used to be when we were young, when we were kids, we used to get like 23 to 26 episodes of television per year. Right. You used to go throughout the entire, what we call the school year. You used to go throughout the entire school year. It's go through the winter, the spring, and then it would stop at the summer. Right. And then come back in the fall. Now, we used to then they cut it. They cut it basically in half, 13 episodes, right?
Right.
The argument for that is like, yeah, but then you're getting rid of the other 13 episodes that were just filler in the entertainment that you were getting. There were always kinds of things that entertainment used to do, like clip shows and and flashbacks or like filler content of like ridiculous premises and stuff like that were off the beaten path of whatever the narrative of the actual show was. And you would watch it, you would be, semi-entertained, and by the time it was over, you were like, yeah, that was okay, that was interesting, but I'm waiting for next week. So now the promise was we're going to cut all that stuff out, and we're just going to get to the heart of the story. Say like X-Files, right? We're just going to get to the heart of the UFO conspiracy. We're not gonna give you these
no more
monster
of the week.
Yeah, no more monsters of the week. We're just gonna get right to it. And originally I said, yeah, but you're giving us less. You're giving us less. You're giving us less, and you're claiming it's more. Fair enough, right? Everybody was with it. Couldn't convince him. So then suddenly it turned into 10 episodes. We're going to give you 10 episodes. But oh my God, these 10 episodes, they're monsters.
Yeah.
Trust me. Oh, by the way, we can't get these 10 episodes done in a year. We're going to have to take 2 years off, you know?
Yeah.
I think what's the first one to do that was Westworld was one of the first to say, yeah, we're not going to be able to come back next year.
And then come back with just awfulness too.
This is the point.
Yeah.
This is the point I'm making. So you're getting less. It's taking them longer to give you less, and less is still not more. The promise is the less would be more. The less is still less, and you're getting way less.
You know what it reminds me of?
But we're paying out the nose for all these things.
Yeah. Do you know what it reminds me of? Well, not direct parallel, but just in hearing you talk about this, it's actually a parallel to comic books from the 80s and 90s into the 2000s, where the artist, you know, you used to get, you know, Jim Lee on 12 issues a year. I mean, he used to even do double-sized issues, and I use him as the anomaly. Eric Larson would do 12 straight issues of Savage Dragon, you know, and then all of a sudden, you know, Rob Liefeld, all of a sudden, you couldn't get a monthly book out of him. You know, Frank Quitely, you get 6 issues a year of anything he might be doing, and he might take 2-3 years off.
Yeah,
and it's
but he gets paid. They get paid ridiculous amounts of money.
It's in the interest of, well, let's let the creators be creative. We're not trying to rush something, but actually having a ticking clock, I think, is, you know, I know especially for me as a creative, that's actually the most important thing for me, is to actually have a ticking clock and have, you know, have to say we have to do this. You know,
what we have discovered is that what makes anything great is the finality of it, right? The fact that it will eventually end.
Mm-hmm.
Is what makes the content great. And this is all like say the Game of Thrones thing. This is all going somewhere. We're heading towards the end now.
Right.
Your mileage varies on the ending. And I don't know. Game of Thrones, I don't think the mileage varies very much. There seems to be a consensus of most people don't like that ending. It's fine. Right. I'm not going to relitigate that. But basically, what makes anything exciting is the fact that it's not going to be around forever.
Yep.
So and it's keeping you engaged in its march towards its own finish, right?
Yeah.
So, in the same vein, the old model of the perpetual story is obsolete. It is not. It's not a viable thing. Like
sure.
we'll just have 50 years of X-Men. None of them are ever getting older. Every now and then we'll blow up the X Mansion, and you know, right. Professor Xavier will be on the moon. You know, or something like that. But for the most part, we're still going. Yeah, exactly. So I understand the idea of needing to change the format, and it foreshortens the format. People like Doug Quietly or Jim Lee. The idea, the older they get into the business, the more prominent they get. The idea of working on a perpetual schedule and pumping out these stories on a regular basis is not a viable thing anymore. You know, they work towards the point where they don't have to do that anymore. I get it. But then you replace that. If that's what you do, replace that with someone who's willing to do that. You know, replace the content that you've taken with viable content. Don't give us less, charge us more, and then make the less. So, I mean, now we're getting TV shows that aren't even 8 episodes. We're getting full seasons of 6 episodes, 7 episodes, maybe 8 episodes. Like game.
Would you argue though? Would you argue
it's 9, it's 8, it's 7? You know, and wait 3 years for it.
Would you argue though that so Marvel is the culprit of the 6 episode phenomenon with Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then they're going to have 6 episodes of Loki. They did have 9 episodes of WandaVision, which was great. Is that more 10, of a byproduct of we're using actual A-list, you know, movie actors?
No.
So we can't actually get them for, you know, more of a commitment.
No. Pay them. Come on.
It's as simple a solution as I can think of.
I mean, okay, in all honesty, what has Sebastian Stan been doing?
Yeah.
You know,
he's been cosplaying Luke Skywalker.
Yes, exactly. Not really, not much. He's been deep faking Luke Skywalker.
You know, I actually read an article, and it came out on April 1st, and it said it's official. Sebastian Stan will play Luke Skywalker, and I'm like, oh my god, why is this not getting more press?
It's a lie.
I realized it was an April Fool's joke. All right, with a minute to go, Hassan, what do you foresee being the solution for this in a realistic sense?
It's not a problem. It is just a thing. There's no solution. It's just it's gonna become exponential, and a lot of content's gonna be missed. I don't know if it's a global system, so that just basically there's just gonna be some parts of entertainment that you're not gonna have access to just because it's cost prohibitive.
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, I think the bubble will burst. I think entertainment right now, content provision for these streaming services is a bubble, and I think it will burst. And I think we'll go back down to a more streamlined, to leaner content. But I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know if that's going to be down to like 4 or 5 to 3 episodes per 5 years of something.
You know what I will say though, actually, cable companies have adapted pretty nicely I wouldn't say nicely, but they've adapted to the point where, you know, I can stream from a laptop any of the channels I have now just by signing into my account. And I feel as if cable companies are going to absorb the app system just as much, because you have smart TVs. And they'll have it right on the boxes. You know, it'll be like, here's your Disney Plus app, and you get it as part of Verizon, or you get it as part of
but you're still going to pay for all that.
But I don't think you're going to look at the cable company and say, bundles. I'll get it as a bundle, because in the end, rather than doing what you're doing, you know, with what you're accurately saying, oh man, I can't afford all these apps, or I don't want to afford all these apps.
The idea was cut the cable because it's too expensive. It's getting too expensive, and you can't watch things on demand and do what you want. But I'm saying I probably paying more now than I ever was for cable.
We'll get into another time as to how on demand has actually distorted time and space and has caused the decay of society. But we were at the end of our show. No, actually, I have a real argument for this, but we won't get into it today. We'll save it for a slow day. All right, that's been our show. Go check out roguematter.com, Hollow Mark number 6, the 6th chapter in the story of how Markham becomes the assassin that you know in Making Markham. It's written by Fiona Leonard. She's amazing. That's live on the site this week. Come check us out next week. We are going to finally, I was going to do it this week, but then I decided to let me push one more week because we had a lot of pop culture news we had not gotten into. We're going to look ahead to the summer movies, summer TV and movies. We're actually going to look at it. We've got a lot of stuff coming out. We're going to do a little fun little gas meter. Do we give about it? And we also have Brian Volkweis coming on next week too. So we've got a jam-packed show. He's going to talk about his Nacelle podcast launch as well. Where else are you going to be? Come back here, comment on the Facebook feed, check us out on YouTube. That's it. It's our show. Have a good week. We'll see you next week.
Rogue Wave.